Hello friends, let us see the concept of fiscal deficit today. As the name indicates, it is a deficit. Deficit means something less. What is less? The revenue is less than the expenditure. That is called as deficit. And whose deficit? Fisc. Fisc is nothing but government's treasury. Government's receipts and government's expenses if compared. And if expenditure of the government is more than government's receipts, that difference is called as deficit. The fiscal deficit is one of the types of deficits. It could be revenue deficit, it could be capital deficit, it could be fiscal deficit, it could be budget deficit. We will concentrate today on fiscal deficit. So the fiscal deficit is the difference between total expenditure minus the receipts of the government except borrowings. Now what are the receipts of the government? Government has tax revenue, non-tax revenue and other revenue. The tax revenue refers to direct taxes and indirect taxes. In India, some of the taxes are collected by the central government while some other taxes are collected by the state government. When the central government prepares the budget, it records the total taxes collected by central government. But in India, we have sharing system of this tax revenue. Central government has to share the tax revenue collected by central government with the state government. And that is decided by Finance Commission. How much percentage of this collection is to be shared by central government with the state governments. So gross tax revenue minus share given to the states remains as the net tax revenue to the central government. And it includes direct taxes as well as indirect taxes. And we know the direct taxes may be in the form of income tax. And indirect taxes may be in the form of the GST or excise or customs like that. So this is first head of revenue to the government. Second is non-tax revenue. This non-tax revenue is in the form of interest received by the central government on investments made, dividend received by the central government on shares purchased in different companies, or it may be in the form of, and dividend may be from different companies as well as from Reserve Bank, from public sector undertakings and so on. So that is another source, non-tax source to the central government. Other sources may also be there, like fees collected, like cess collected. These are, or even say in the form of disinvestment made by the government, and government collects money. So these are some of the sources of revenue to the government. A total of this during that year is compared with the expenditure which the government has to make. And this expenditure may be revenue expenditure, may be capital expenditure. It includes the interest, it includes the subsidies, it includes the salaries, pensions, establishment expenses and whatnot. So difference between these two is called as fiscal deficit. Now this fiscal deficit is expressed in terms of percentage of GDP. And this fiscal deficit should be as low as possible. Now, why this fiscal deficit is so important? It goes without saying that if there is deficit, government has to finance that deficit. Government has to find out the sources of collecting money for this difference. And these sources could be of two types. That is called as financing fiscal deficit. One, borrowing is to be made by the government. And this borrowing could be domestic borrowing or foreign borrowing. The government can borrow the money within the country or can borrow the money from outside the country. This is one way. And the second way is asking the central bank to print currency and bring in circulation more and more currency. These are the two ways in which this deficit is financed. And if we look at these two ways of financing fiscal deficit, we can immediately, very easily understand the effects of that. If government goes on borrowing, what will happen? Demand for money in the market will go up. And like any other commodity, money is also a commodity. Its supply remaining constant, but demand goes up. The natural result is the price of that commodity. Which commodity? Money. So price of money will go up. And price of money is nothing but interest rate. So if government borrowings is more, naturally the interest rates will go up. And high interest rates are detrimental to, or the high interest rates adversely affect the trade and industry. Hence, more borrowing in the market is a problem. If interest rate is high, interest expenditure will be high and therefore it will lead to inflation. The second effect of borrowing from market. So if government doesn't borrow and follow the other route, that is asking the Reserve Bank to finance it by issuing more currency, what will happen? The answer is very simple. Supply of money will be more. And in that case, if supply is more, naturally, in the market, there will be more demand in the market. And if this demand is more in the market, again there is a chance of inflation, because in that short period of time, supply of products or production of different goods and commodities may not be possible. So either way, borrowing or issuing more currency will lead to inflation, and that is not a good thing. Secondly, if the borrowing is more, government will have to pay the interest on it and will have to repay. So there will be installment as well as interest payment. And if that is more, from next year onwards, the amount available with the government for development expenses will be less, because interest will have to be paid first. And hence that is also not good for the economy as such. This is about fiscal deficit. Thank you very much. Let us meet in the next episode with some other concept. Till then, bye.